Welcome in. If you're here, you've already been watching the shifts taking place in podcasting. Some of us are building something new, some are trying to understand how to keep going, and some have a show with a little mileage on it, and you're wondering how to grow without losing yourself in the process. Wherever you fall in that timeline, your presence in this work matters. I'm Talib Jasir, and I've been guiding creatives since 2015 and working closely with podcasters since 2019. In that time, I've watched people launch shows with excitement, lose their direction somewhere in the middle, return with more clarity, and find a rhythm that fits who they are. I've supported independent creators, institutions, and shows that ran for years before they ever crossed my path. Across all those experiences, I started to notice that certain patterns kept showing up. So that's the real purpose of this masterclass, to create more confidence in what you're creating and also present less strain. The common advice in podcasting tends to repeat itself. And if you're anything like me, you're kind of tired of hearing the same surface level recommendations. Because those recommendations rarely account for instinct, lived experience, or the way people from marginalized communities create without the cushion of endless resources. And what I've seen is that creators grow when they understand how the different parts of their work connect, and when they recognize the season they're in and make decisions from clarity rather than pressure. So this masterclass is designed to bring you deeper into strategies that will support growth in the current podcast industry. We'll look at how to design a listening path that moves naturally across your podcast, YouTube presence if you have one, the short form content you share, and the email list that keeps your audience close. We'll examine how a single clip can gain more traction than an entire episode when it reflects the energy that draws new listeners in. We'll study how collaboration, pacing, format design, evergreen storytelling, transcripts, and community each play a role that can change depending on the stage of podcasting you're in and the work you're ready to do. Here's what I suggest before you even get started. Take out of this what fits your season and leave what doesn't. And let the clarity that speaks to you guide how you move forward in your creative practice. So with all that said, we'll begin with the first strategy. Strategy 1, ecosystems. Designing a structure your audience can actually follow. This might be a wake-up call, but most listeners don't discover creators in a straight line because they move through your work the same way they move through their daily habits. Take a person just like me or you. We watch a clip on YouTube or Instagram, hear a full episode of your podcast later on our preferred apps, and stay connected on platforms where we already spend our time. This pattern shows up across the podcast industry, and it continues to influence how discovery works in today's market. An ecosystem becomes the structure that supports these habits. It's the combination of a podcast feed, YouTube channel, short-form video, and a direct communication channel like email. When these parts are arranged with intention, the experience becomes easier to follow, and the people who find your content are more likely to remain connected. So the purpose of this structure is to make movement between platforms predictable and clear. YouTube, like it or not, often acts as the first point of discovery because people are searching for instruction, perspective, or entertainment, and a short clip from your episode can be just enough to catch their attention. Once a clip resonates, the next step is the full episode where your longer conversations and main ideas live. From there, the email list becomes a space where updates and communication stay consistent for those who want to follow your work without relying on social platforms. Think about it this way. Each part of an ecosystem carries a specific function. Short-form content helps listeners meet your voice. The podcast feed strengthens the relationship through deeper conversation. And a YouTube channel can broaden reach through search-driven behavior. And an email list keeps the relationship steady because visibility doesn't depend on an algorithm. When these pieces support one another, retention grows naturally because people understand how to move through your work without guessing. Industry trends reinforce these patterns. Global podcast listenership has passed 580 million people, and many creators experience pod fade because they rely on a single platform or a single content format. At the same time, video-integrated podcasting continues to grow, and short clips remain a leading method for discovering new shows. When a system connects these behaviors, creators position themselves for steady growth rather than reacting to each new shift in the market. Clarity becomes the foundation of a strong ecosystem. A listener who finds a clip should see a clear path to the full episode. A listener who enjoys the episode should know where to subscribe or follow. Tools like Podpage, Podlink, Notion Pages, or simple websites can serve as a hub that guides people through those steps. The specific tool isn't the focus here. The purpose is to remove confusion and make engagement simple. When your structure is intuitive, listeners can follow your work across platforms without friction. This increases retention, encourages sharing, and reduces the pressure creators often feel when they try to maintain a presence everywhere at once. The opportunity here is that the system does the guiding so you can focus on the work itself. But know this, an ecosystem works best when it reflects real audience behavior. It should feel natural, stable, and flexible enough to evolve as your creative goals evolve. When designed with clarity, it supports both the audience's path and your ability to sustain the work over time. Strategy 2, short form discovery, turning clips into real listeners. Let's talk about how potential listeners discover your podcast for the first time. For a lot of listeners, the introduction to your work isn't a full episode. It's a clip they scroll past while they're standing in line, taking a break at work, or sitting on the couch at home. A few seconds of video or audio is often the only chance you'll get to hook them before they decide whether they want more. Recent reports show that a large share of podcast discovery now starts with short-form content, with some analysis estimating that more than half of new podcast discoveries are driven by clips on platforms like YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Instagram Reels. Short-form discovery is simply this: a clip from your podcast that gives people enough of your voice, point of view, or story to make them curious enough to want to listen to the full episode. As short-form video continues to dominate social media attention and engagement, creators who know how to design clips with intention are the best aligned with how audiences actually spend time online. In our current creative markets, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok function primarily like search engines. People type questions, topics, and names into the bar and expect to see short content first. Like it or not, YouTube in particular has become a major discoverability path in podcasting. Multiple industry studies show that nearly half of podcast listeners say they have discovered a new show on YouTube. And those numbers keep climbing year after year. So let's slow this down for a moment and talk about what makes a strong clip. A useful clip does at least one of three things: captures a clear idea or opinion, offers a specific insight or lesson, drops listeners into a story climax where something real happened. So look for the parts of an episode where you remember the energy shifting, or something you said that felt as if it captured the whole point of your episode clearly. You can pull a question or quote from you or your guest that you remember resonated on an emotional level. Consider any shift in tone where the conversation became grounded and transparent. These are the segments that carry weight and make potential listeners stop scrolling. So here's something for any stage. For an aspiring or new podcast, the focus is simple. Start out with one strong clip from each new episode. Choose a section where you state the main point plainly or guide a guest into a clear takeaway. Share that clip on the one platform where you already have an audience or intentionally growing to promote your podcast. And of course, where you can show up consistently, whether that's YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikTok, or any other social media platform where you get real engagement. The priority at this stage is building a habit of clipping, posting, and connecting the clip back to your full episodes. If you're 2 or 3 seasons in or have around 25 to 50 episodes, your back catalog becomes an asset. At this stage, you can return to earlier episodes and pull out evergreen clips that still reflect your current values and focus. Batch a set of these clips around a theme, such as money, mental health, creativity, relationships, or whatever fits your genre or topics. When you release them over a few weeks, you create focused bursts of discovery that point people to specific episodes instead of sending them into a long, unstructured list, which for a lot of new listeners can be your streaming platform. If you've been podcasting for years and consider yourself seasoned, the strategy shifts toward intention and pattern. You have the opportunity to build clip series that follow a recurring idea. For example, you might create a weekly question clip, a recurring story segment, or a sequence of clips that walks through one concept step by step. Long-running shows benefit from organizing clips into recognizable series so that your new listeners understand where to start and long-time listeners are reminded of what to expect. I want you to think about it this way. Across all stages of podcasting, your short-form discovery becomes more powerful when clips are treated as invitations. And creators can strengthen that invitation by adding clear on-screen or caption text that names the topic in everyday language. Ending the clip with a simple directional line, such as listen to the full conversation on whichever streaming platform you prefer, or more importantly, where you track your data. Or you can pair each clip with a link that sends people directly to a single episode or a simple page that lists a few recommended starting points. Don't take my word for it, though. The data supports what I'm talking about. In recent years, short-form video outperformed long-form content on most social platforms, both in engagement and in watch-through rates, which means our audience have already shown us through their online consumption behaviors that they prefer to sample before they commit. With that said, short-form video has become the default introduction point for many of your new listeners. And here's the biggest takeaway. A clip isn't just a summary of your episode, since it can function as an entry point that guides potential listeners into your full conversations. One well-chosen segment that reflects the core idea of your work can encourage listeners to return to their preferred listening platform, explore more of what you've created, and move directly into your podcast streams. When you choose segments intentionally, each selection becomes a clear invitation that supports steady, organic growth. Short-form discovery rewards clarity, focus, and consistency over time. So when you treat each clip as a deliberate introduction rather than an afterthought, you can create more opportunities for listeners to find your podcast, remember it, and keep coming back. Strategy 3, collaboration, growing through shared work and audiences. Collaboration remains one of the most dependable ways to reach new listeners because people often follow voices they already trust. When two or more creators share space in a conversation, a joint episode, or a coordinated release, listeners are introduced to your work through a creator they already value. Industry data supports this pattern. Recent podcast marketing guides list cross-promotion and collaborative episodes among the highest performing growth tactics for 2025. And these strategies continue to carry weight as the podcast industry expands. Global listener counts have passed 584 million and are projected to exceed 619 million in 2026, which creates both opportunity and competition. So collaboration helps creators stand out by meeting listeners where trust already exists. And the great news is collaboration doesn't require heavy planning. A simple exchange is often enough. For instance, invite a guest into your podcast for a focused conversation. Join another creator's show to offer your insight. Record a short dialogue that both of you release. Another opportunity is to appear together on a live for an unscripted discussion about a shared topic. Let the structure be flexible. What matters is that the exchange reflects your voice and supports the direction of your podcast. Creators at different stages can approach collaboration in ways that align with their specific podcast goals. Aspiring and new podcasters can partner with peers who are also building their audience, which helps establish early momentum and gives listeners a clear sense of their show's identity. Creators with 2 or 3 seasons or a catalog of 25 to 50 episodes can collaborate with guests whose themes align with their existing work, creating a smooth connection between episodes and strengthening engagement. And seasoned podcasters can deepen their reach by developing recurring guest segments, mini-series with aligned creators, or long-term partnerships that reinforce the direction of their show. Collaborative episodes also create opportunities far beyond the recording itself. A strong segment from your conversation can circulate on another creator's platform, which brings new listeners to your work. A segment from their perspective can circulate on yours, which builds interest in both directions. This shared exchange supports discovery because it mirrors how audiences naturally move across podcasts, social media platforms, and video content. Industry analysis continues to show that listeners often discover podcasts through familiar voices, creator recommendations, or clips shared between platforms. When listeners see you in conversation with other creators, they begin to understand your place within the broader creative community. They learn how your perspective fits into topics they already care about, and they gain a clearer sense of who you are as a person and a creator. That recognition builds trust and helps your podcast stay present in their listening habits. If you want collaboration to feel purposeful, choose creators whose work aligns with your themes and values. Reach out with clear intention and invite guests who bring grounded insight or lived experiences that complements your direction. When the exchange is authentic, listeners feel it, and they're more likely to subscribe or follow your show after the episode ends. So the biggest takeaway here is that collaboration supports growth by amplifying your presence through shared audiences. And when approached with clarity and intention, it becomes a sustainable strategy that strengthens your reach without adding unnecessary pressure to your workflow. Strategy 4, consistency, creating a foundation listeners can trust. Consistency has to be one of the most misunderstood parts of podcasting. Many creators hear the word and assume it means posting constantly or producing at a pace that doesn't match their life. The reality can be much simpler. Consistency reflects a pattern of creation that both you and your listeners can depend on, a pattern that supports your well-being while keeping your audience connected. It turns out listeners tend to stay with shows that feel steady and grounded. Industry research continues to show that long-term engagement increases when a podcast maintains a clear release pattern, no matter the frequency. A 2025 listener study from several hosting platforms identified predictable publishing as a key factor in retention for both new and returning audiences. People often build their listening habits around creators whose work arrives with structure. After you decide on a schedule that fits your life, place it where listeners naturally look for direction. Share it in your episode intro, add it in your show notes, include it in your podcast description. These small cues help people understand when they can expect your next episode, which strengthens connection and reduces uncertainty. If you need time away from your show, communicate it clearly. A short note in an episode intro, a sentence in your show notes, or a simple update to your email list keep listeners informed. Even a brief message such as, "I'm taking a pause and returning in April," gives people something clear to hold on to. Another helpful tool is a bridge episode. This type of episode can be short and uncomplicated. It might be a behind-the-scenes reflection, an update on your process, a question you're exploring, or something you've learned while recording. Bridge episodes help maintain a sense of presence without requiring the effort of a full production. Creators benefit from approaching consistency differently depending on their stage of work. New podcasters can test shorter runs or clusters of episodes until they understand what they can sustain. Creators with 2 or 3 seasons can refine their process by paying attention to how their energy moves through production cycles. And seasoned podcasters can map out their year in intentional arcs that include active seasons, rest periods, and rebuild phases that protect their longevity. Industry trends reinforce the value of this approach. Because unfortunately, many shows fade because creators take on unsustainable schedules early on. Meanwhile, listeners show a strong preference for dependable podcasts rather than constant output. As more creators adopt seasonal models and planned pauses, the broader market has shifted towards steady, intentional publishing rather than rapid production. So here's a takeaway from this strategy. Consistency ultimately strengthens the relationship between you and your listeners. When your schedule reflects your actual capacity, the work becomes lighter to maintain and easier for your audience to follow. Over time, that stability supports both your creative health and the long-term presence of your show. Strategy 5. Multi-format content, letting one episode travel across platforms. Multi-format content strengthens how your podcast shows up across platforms without requiring you to produce more than you already do. A single episode can reach listeners through audio, video, written context, and visual elements that support the message of your podcast. These formats help your work circulate in the places where people already spend time, which increases the likelihood that new listeners will find you and current listeners will stay connected. The data shows that a significant portion of discovery now happens through video, short-form content, and written summaries. Many listeners watch podcasts on YouTube, skim captions before committing to an episode, or learn about new hosts through clips and visuals. These behaviors shape how your podcast is discovered and how people move through your work. 2 formats continue to carry strong impact for creators at every stage. Audiograms allow people to hear a moment from your episode while seeing minimal visual movement, which works well for social platforms where silent scrolling is common. A single quote, idea, or exchange paired with simple motion can help listeners understand the tone of your show without asking for more than a few seconds of attention. Video clips. Short and focused video clips continue to perform consistently on platforms such as YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikTok. These clips create direct pathways into your full episodes because they highlight the energy and direction of your work in a way that feels immediate and familiar to viewers. Creators can shape their multi-format approach based on their stage of podcasting. New podcasters can start with audiograms, clips, and a short written summary for each episode. Creators with 2 or 3 seasons can revisit earlier episodes to build clip series or selective audiograms that reintroduce strong themes. And seasoned podcasters can build structured visual systems that reinforce their long-term identity, along with thoughtful written reflections or companion pieces that deepen understanding. And of course, you can apply these at any stage. And templates across these platforms help keep this process manageable. A clip, audiogram, or summary template can save time and help your presence stay consistent across platforms. And you can build these using tools such as Canva, Descript, CapCut, Notion, or simple Google Docs. Canva can hold your visual layouts. Descript and CapCut can store reusable clips and audiogram formats. Notion or Docs can house written summaries with repeatable structures. And one more tool that a lot of people have heard about, but not everyone is using. Notebook LM can support your written formats by turning transcripts into summaries, theme lists, quote collections, or companion notes, which makes repurposing smoother because your ideas are already organized. When you rely on templates, you no longer start from scratch each week, and your content maintains a clear and recognizable look across every platform you use. Industry trends point toward continued growth in multi-format consumption. More listeners begin their discovery through video. More people rely on short-form previews and written summaries to decide whether to commit to a full episode. When your content can meet them through these formats, your reach expands without requiring additional recording or production. The takeaway for this section is that multi-format content gives your work flexibility. It helps listeners find you in different ways and strengthens how long your episodes remain relevant. When one episode supports several touch points, the work you create today continues to move through the ecosystem long after the release date. Strategy 6, Evergreen Content, creating work that stays relevant. Now, most of you watching have already heard of Evergreen Content. So in this section, I'm going to break it down as a clear opportunity for strategy. Evergreen content supports growth long after an episode is released. Think of them as episodes that stay useful because they speak to ideas, challenges, or experiences that remain familiar to listeners no matter when they discover your show. Evergreen episodes often become the entry points for your new audiences because they represent your clearest and most accessible ideas. And the latest podcast data continues to confirm that evergreen topics outperform trend-based releases over time. Multiple hosting platforms have reported that episodes covering foundational skills, personal development themes, technical walkthroughs, and recurring human experiences generate steady long-term streams of new listeners. These episodes remain searchable, especially when supported by transcripts, which we'll discuss in the next strategy, clear episode titles, and short-form video that reinforces your podcast topic, message, or genre. Put it like this: new listeners need clear pathways into your archive, and you can support that discovery by placing evergreen episodes in strategic positions. Here's some of the ways you can incorporate it. An evergreen starter episode at the top of your podcast feed as a trailer or pin episode. You can highlight evergreen episodes inside your show description with a short list labeled Start Here. You can pin them on YouTube, place them at the top of your Linktree or pod page, or build a simple playlist on your preferred platforms. Many podcasters have seen increases in new listener retention after curating these clear on-ramps because it removes the guesswork of where your audience begins. Here's how creators at different stages can build evergreen material in ways that match their experience. And remember, you can use any of these strategies no matter what level you are as a podcaster. New podcasters can create a small set of foundational episodes that introduce their perspective, outline the purpose of their show, or present the core ideas they return to often. This helps listeners understand the direction of the podcast without searching through the entire feed. Podcasters with several seasons can improve their archive by updating strong episodes or resurfacing conversations that continue to resonate across your audience. This approach has helped many creators revive episodes that perform moderately at release, yet gain traction later once paired with clips or written summaries. And seasoned podcasters can develop structured evergreen sequences such as multi-episode explorations, deep dive arcs, or recurring themes that create a recognizable signature across the catalog. These sequences often become listener favorites because they provide depth and continuity. Evergreen content becomes more powerful when supported by simple and repeatable repurposing. A segment from an evergreen episode can become a short-form clip, an audiogram, a standout quote graphic, or a written takeaway that travels across platforms. And many creators report improved discoverability when evergreen clips circulate consistently, especially on YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikTok. These clips serve as direct invitations into the full episode and increase listener retention because the content aligns with long-term interests rather than passing trends. Something to note is that search-driven discovery continues to rise across the podcast market. Clear episode titles, natural language descriptions, transcripts, and keywords drawn directly from the episode help evergreen content appear in search results. YouTube remains one of the strongest engines for this type of discovery because listeners often search for topics rather than show names. When your evergreen episodes are aligned with topics people actively look for, they stay visible. And here's the key takeaway. Evergreen content gives your podcast stability. It helps your work stay relevant across seasons of your life and your show. It also gives listeners multiple ways to enter your catalog and understand the type of creator you are, not just the content you create. This clarity strengthens the long-term identity of your show and keeps listeners connected, even during the quieter periods or changes in your release schedule. You see how all these strategies can work together? Let's keep going. Strategy 7, transcripts and search visibility, making your work easier to find. Most podcast creators understand what transcripts are, and most have heard the usual explanations for why they matter. Even with that awareness, a large number of podcasters still skip transcripts because they assume the process adds more work to an already full production cycle. This section is here to offer clarity for creators who haven't adopted transcripts yet, or who haven't seen how they can strengthen discoverability, repurposing, and overall workflow in ways that actually lighten the load instead of adding pressure. Transcripts are one of the simplest tools you can use to help people discover your podcast. They help listeners who prefer reading, support people with hearing differences, strengthen your accessibility, and give search engines something to hold on to. Think of it this way. A transcript turns your spoken conversation into a written resource that can travel further and help more people find you. Industry data shows that a large share of search-driven podcast discovery relies on written text. Search engines read words, not audio. When your episodes include transcripts, your conversations become searchable on platforms such as YouTube, Google, and podcast directories that pull written content. Many creators who adopted transcripts in the past few years have seen consistent improvements and long-tail discovery because the topics they cover stay visible. A transcript can also help you as a creator by giving you a clear record of your ideas. It lets you revisit your own language without scrubbing through a full episode. It supports your clipping process because you can search for a phrase, locate the time code, and make your edits with accuracy. This can save hours of guesswork, especially for podcasters who manage their own production, and your transcripts can even be used as instruction for your production team. And there are several ways to create transcripts without adding complexity to your workflow. Script and Riverside provide automatic transcripts with edit-ready text. YouTube auto-generates transcripts for uploaded videos, which you can correct inside the platform. Podcasters who prefer a simple approach can upload audio to tools such as Otter, Trent, or Notebook LM to generate clean text and organize highlights. Whichever method you choose or software you rely on, make sure you note that the transcript should remain true to what has already been recorded, with corrections made only for typos, punctuation, grammar, or misheard words. Transcripts also support your metadata. When you write your episode title, description, and keywords, you can pull language directly from your transcript conversation. This keeps your search terms aligned with your actual content. Many creators miss this step and rely on broad or vague descriptions, which limits their reach, when in fact, natural language descriptions drawn from your transcript help algorithms understand what the episode covers. Here's some strategies creators at different stages can use transcripts in ways that support their growth. If you're a new podcaster, use transcripts to identify your strongest ideas, refine messaging, and build clip lists. Creators with growing catalogs can turn transcripts into written summaries, theme collections, or quick reference guides for listeners. And seasoned podcasters can turn transcripts into deeper assets such as blog style reflections, companion articles, and even teaching materials that help the content serve more than one purpose. And remember, any of these strategies can be effective no matter which level creator you currently are. Search visibility remains one of the most reliable ways listeners discover podcasts in 2025 and beyond. And written content continues to play a central role in that process. Transcripts, clear descriptions, accurate keywords, and topic-aligned titles help your work appear when people search for subjects you discuss. When these pieces are aligned, your podcast becomes easier to find, and your episodes continue to support growth well beyond their release date. The key takeaway here is that transcripts strengthen your clarity, expand your reach, and help you stay organized. They make your work accessible in ways that support both new and returning listeners. They also give you a foundation for repurposing, teaching, and sharing. And over time, these written layers help your podcast stay visible and meaningful in a crowded market. All right, we've arrived at the final strategy. Strategy 8, community and listener connection, building a relationship that strengthens your show and your audience. The word community often brings to mind large online groups, complicated platforms, or the idea that a creator must constantly manage a crowd. But in podcasting, community describes something much more grounded. It reflects the ongoing relationship between you and the people who spend time with your work. And it reflects the ways your listeners connect with one another through the ideas you share. When approached with intention, community can become a strategy that increases listenership, deepens engagement, and strengthens loyalty in ways that support both you and the people who follow your show. Listener behavior continues to show that audiences stay with creators who feel present, consistent, and connected to the conversations they start. People return to podcasts where the host speaks directly to them, acknowledges their curiosity, and offers a sense of shared purpose. Studies from recent years confirm that podcasts with active listener relationships perform better across retention, word-of-mouth referrals, and episode completion rates. This connection matters because listeners often choose hosts they trust as part of their weekly routine. And I've got good news. You don't need a complex system to build this type of relationship. What you need is a clear way for listeners to feel included in the ongoing life of your podcast. This can happen through a closing prompt, an opening reflection, a listener question in the middle of an episode, or a short mention of a comment that resonated with you, even listener shoutouts. These touch points help people feel recognized without demanding ongoing real-time interaction from you. Mutual benefit is the foundation of a strong podcast community. When listeners feel connected, they share your work more naturally, recommend your show to people in their circles, and participate in ways that strengthen the overall experience. On your side, you receive clearer feedback, a deeper understanding of listener needs, and a set of ideas that reflect what your audience values most. This cycle strengthens your show and gives your listeners a sense that their presence matters. And creators at different stages can shape their community strategies in ways that match their current needs. New podcasters can build trust by sharing their intentions for their show, naming who they are speaking to, and acknowledging early supporters in ways that feel personal and genuine. Creators with growing catalogs can invite listeners into Q&A episodes, gather stories or reflections that connect to upcoming themes, or highlight listener contributions that illustrate how the show is being received. Seasoned podcasters can establish signature listener segments, open select episodes with listener questions, or host periodic sessions where the audience influences future topics. Community grows when listeners can recognize one another and see the through line of shared experience. And there are practical ways to support this without building a large platform. A simple comment thread you revisit weekly can give listeners a place to speak to one another. A voicemail line, like SpeakPipe, allows people to contribute questions or stories. A monthly prompt tied to an episode theme can help listeners feel included in the larger arc of your show. These structures remain manageable for you while giving your audience meaningful ways to participate. A growing body of research shows that listeners want connection with the creators they follow. Weekly podcast listeners express a desire for hosts to invite feedback, respond to questions, or incorporate listener perspectives into episodes. Nearly half of listeners said their favorite hosts feel like people they could reach out to in real life. These responses show a clear preference for creators who maintain a genuine presence and offer a steady sense of relationship. When listeners feel seen, heard, and included, the dynamic shifts between you and the audience because the show becomes a shared experience rather than a one-direction broadcast. So the takeaway for this strategy is that engagement deepens as people invest in your voice and the direction of your work. Some will share episodes because they want others to hear something meaningful, while others offer feedback because they see themselves reflected in your ideas. And most of your listeners will stay with you through long stretches of your catalog because they trust your perspective. This type of connection supports creative freedom and steady audience growth, and it gives listeners a sense of belonging that enriches their relationship with your show and you as a creator. A strong podcast community stays focused on clarity, connection, and shared understanding. It supports your listeners by giving them a place to feel seen, and it supports your growth by helping your work travel farther. Over time, these relationships shape the identity of your show and give your audience a lasting reason to return. So those are the 8 strategies. And if you stay for this masterclass, thank you for taking the time to watch. We've worked through strategies that influence how podcasts grow in today's market. These strategies reflect the habits of real listeners and the creative decisions that support long-term success. The goal for me has always been to help you understand how your work moves, how people find it, and how to guide them through your creative world with intention. To summarize this masterclass, remember that sustainable progress comes from building systems that carry your voice further. It requires clarity about how people discover your work, how connection is made, and how movement happens on the paths you create on each platform. Every creator benefits from understanding these habits because they show what listeners respond to and what keeps their attention over time. If this masterclass has been helpful and you want support beyond today's session, there are several ways to continue this work with me. The 2026 Q1 podcast cohort is the most structured option. You can choose from one of 3 options: a Tuesday lunch group, Wednesday evening group, or a Saturday morning cohort. Each one runs for 10 weeks, starting the second week of January, and includes live teaching with me as your lead facilitator, insight from guest industry experts, and weekly peer-to-peer masterminds. Seats are limited across the options because I want every participant to receive guidance in an intimate setting, not a crowded classroom experience. So if you want accountability, strategy, implementation support, and a community of creators moving with the same level of intention, the cohort is built for that. And you can sign up through our website, afrosanaudio.com/podcastcreatormastermind. If you prefer direct coaching or consulting, I offer one-on-one sessions for podcasters who want to refine their show, brainstorm new ideas or direction, shape their ecosystem, create sustainable production systems, or prepare their content for broader visibility. This is the most personalized way to work with me. We look at your goals, output, habits, and your direction to create a strategy that fits the season you're in and the work you want to produce. If you want to learn more, simply reach out to Talib Jasir at afrosanaudio.com, and I'll get back to you with more information. Lastly, skill plate courses are coming soon. These will be self-paced trainings built for creators who want clarity and structure without the commitments of a cohort or private coaching. The masterclasses introduce the concepts. The skill plate courses walk you through execution. They'll include templates, workflows, examples, and guided instruction that you can immediately apply to your show. The courses are intended to save you time, reduce overwhelm, and help you implement without second-guessing the process. These courses are set up to become reference points you can return to whenever you need direction. No matter which path you choose, this is about supporting the work you want to create. This masterclass was built to give you clarity. What you do next becomes a decision about structure and support, so your ideas can move with consistency instead of friction. I appreciate you spending this time with me, and I'm looking forward to seeing how your work grows from here. Make sure you like and leave a comment, and let me know if there are any other topics you'd like me to create, whether it's in SkillPlate or on YouTube. Once again, thanks for watching. I hope this masterclass supported you in your creative endeavors and however you measure your podcast success. I'm Talib Jasir. Thanks for watching.